Hello, this is manic.mercurian with your birth chart reading. This reading will be for Wednesday, July 12th, 1995 at 7:20 a.m. in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. So this means that you have Sun in Cancer, Moon in Capricorn, and Leo rising. Before we get further into the reading, I did want to thank you for allowing me to make this public. Definitely, and for anyone else who's watching this, that's completely optional. This person actually volunteered for me to post this publicly, but most readings I just have as a private video, so that's definitely an option. But again, thank you for letting me post this publicly, just for anyone else who wants to watch this for whatever reason. If you did want a reading just like this one, definitely feel free to hit me up. I'll leave my information in the description. I'll leave my website there where you can get more information on readings, and you can also purchase readings directly through my website. And then I'll leave my email as well. You can email me any questions, and if you are seeking a reading, just make sure to email me your birth date, time, and place as well. Okay, but anyway, so back to the actual reading here. So, actually, one quick thing real quick. So, for your convenience, I always do this with my readings, but I've separated the reading into categories. So there's timestamps in the description that you can use at your convenience for these different sections of the reading. All right. But for the first section, we're just going to talk about general themes that are going on. From these themes, we can kind of speculate about personality traits to some extent, but we're all, more importantly, we're going to talk about kind of just what you're dealing with astrologically for your entire life, right? That's what this chart is for. And last thing before we get to the reading, I'm showing your birth chart now. I use equal houses, so it could look a little bit different than how you've seen your chart elsewhere. If you're not familiar with what this chart means, that's perfectly fine. I like to just show it anyway because, this is what I'm looking at when I do readings. This is all that I look at. This is where I'm getting all my information from. So I just like to show it, and I do my best to explain, the points so that you understand what I'm talking about, right? Okay, but let's get into the actual reading. So, Sun in Cancer, Moon in Capricorn, Leo rising. We'll talk about your Leo rising, of course, but the main thing that I really noticed is the whole Cancer Capricorn axis. I think, that's definitely the most, I don't want to say most important, but that's definitely like the kind of the backbone of your chart. That's where a lot of stuff is going on for you. You've got not just Sun, but Venus and Mercury as well, all in Cancer. And then Moon, as well as Neptune and Uranus in Capricorn. So a lot of planets on those two opposing signs. So basically what that means is, well, for one, these signs are kind of intense. They're both cardinal, and they're both yin signs, so they're both more introverted. Some people would describe them as feminine. What that means really is they're more like receptive. They're more about internal processing, okay? So they're not feminine in the sense that you're going to be like super girly just because you have placements like that. It's more like yin and yang is a better way to put it. Yin. So both Cancer and Capricorn deal with looking for stability, building a structure, right? Cancer has to do with home and family kind of. Capricorn has to do with setting goals, being ambitious, and again, searching for that foundation, meeting their needs in the long run. That's what Capricorns are generally excellent at. We'll talk more about Capricorn and Capricorn Moon in particular in just a moment. But first, let's talk about the Cancer part of your chart. So having Sun, Venus, and Mercury all in Cancer, Cancer is the most emotional sign, right? So this would indicate that you're very sensitive. You experience a whole range of emotions. What's interesting, though, is that Moon in astrology deals with how you deal with emotions. It represents the core part of your personality. And Moon is actually in Capricorn, which doesn't typically focus so much on emotions. So it's sort of a contradiction. On the one hand, you are very sensitive, you are very passionate, very emotional. That's what is indicated by your Cancer placements. But at the same time, because you have Moon in Capricorn, that indicates that it's like you are very sensitive, but at the same time, you kind of are in this perpetual state of detaching from your emotion or detaching from your immediate feeling, in order to secure long-term satisfaction or long-term security. Does that make sense? So, and this just has to do with how you were raised. We're going to talk more about that in the next chapter, but just to talk about it a little bit because it is relevant here. The way you were raised was probably very difficult. You had to take care of yourself from an early age. And so not only are you accustomed to taking care of your physical needs, managing your own time, energy, money, problem solving, things like that, securing your needs for the long term, you're used to doing that all on your own. You're very independent, basically, right? But also emotionally as well. When you have an emotional problem or when you're dealing with something emotionally, Moon and Capricorn suggest that you prefer to just deal with these things on your own. It's just the way you were kind of raised. It's what has worked for you. You tend to be just very independent all around, and to some extent, I think that's really admirable. I think many of us could look to people like you that have placements like Moon and Capricorn, just to look to see some of us struggle with being independent. So that's really great that you can be so secure on your own and take care of yourself, basically. You don't look to anyone else to clean up after you, so to speak, right? So that's pretty cool. But just like anything else in astrology, there are pros and cons, there are downsides. For example, with Moon and Capricorn, being so independent can come at the cost of your relationship. So it may be difficult for you to open up to others. It may be difficult for you to know when it's appropriate to rely on other people or when to involve other people with your issues, because we all have issues. And I think, at some point, to have any kind of close relationship, it's kind of necessary to, I don't know, rely on each other from time to time or things like that, or at least just kind of open up about these deeper parts of our personality, right? So all of that could be a bit of a struggle for you, because that's just not how you deal with things typically, right? You typically just deal with things on your own, and you may kind of keep a lot inside. You may bottle things up a little bit because, again, that's just what you're accustomed to. I wanted to talk about Sun in the 12th house, though. So this is also a very difficult placement. I won't lie to you about that. The reason why is because whatever placements are in the 12th house are kind of difficult to connect with. 12th house represents the subconscious, spirituality. Having major planets there makes you kind of a weirdo, so to speak. Not in a bad way necessarily. But for example, Sun in the 12th house, Sun represents the ego, right? And it's how we portray ourselves. It's the more exterior part of the personality. And having Sun in the 12th house means that, again, I'm going to talk about the way you were raised a little bit. I don't usually talk about that so early, but that's okay. But something in your childhood and your upbringing kind of just resulted in you, again, this is echoing some similar themes that I've already just discussed, but one way or another, you felt like you couldn't express yourself. You felt like you weren't really allowed to have your own individuality, your own personality. Maybe, this could have happened in a whole number of different scenarios. But often there's some kind of trauma or some kind of really strong pressure for you to you may have felt like you just couldn't exist. You were in this perpetual state of dissociation. Okay, so again, there is a little bit of a connection between Sun in 12th house and Moon in Capricorn. Both are indicating you learning to be extremely private and independent. You felt like you just couldn't express yourself. I don't want to speculate on why that happened exactly, but that's just how it was. So that is very challenging, especially early on in life. You may have just felt like early on in life, you may have felt like you just didn't really have your own personality in a way. Like you were so detached from yourself that part of yourself was just completely blocked. The silver lining, though, is that, in some senses, how do I put this? Like, on the one hand, you were very precocious. You learned how to take care of yourself very quickly compared to your peers. You may have been like working at a young age. That's pretty common for people with Moon and Capricorn. But on the other hand, you were kind of a late bloomer in the sense of, when it came to expressing yourself and, joining the table, so to speak, and, speaking for yourself, having an opinion and things like that, or just kind of sharing your light, so to speak, being proud of yourself and having that kind of outgoing, like bubbly personality. That's typically what we'd expect from Leo rising, right? But because Sun is in the 12th house, all of that, it may have taken you much longer to kind of embrace those parts of your personality. To some extent, you may still be learning this. Sometimes it takes, into our 20s or 30s when we have a placement like this, just to become familiar with how to express ourselves. Okay. So that is difficult, but I'm still getting to the silver lining. So the silver lining is once you do kind of develop that part of yourself, once you learn, it's okay to be present, it's okay to, you're going to affect other people, right? And that's okay. Other people can really benefit from your gifts, your energy, your opinions, your words, your actions, whatever it is. So over time, you will learn how to kind of involve yourself more and be a little bit more outgoing, more expressive. And this will happen naturally. And once this does happen, actually, real quick about that, there are some key kind of growth spurt moments. And it happens every 9 years. So age 9, you may have made a lot of progress with this. Age 18 is actually a really big one. You may have grown a lot that at that time. That's common for most people, but especially with this type of placement. And then again, age 27, age 36, etc. every 9 years. So yes, but anyway, so as you learn to develop that part of your personality, your individuality, being expressive, being proud of your, just having that kind of vibrant personality, kind of like what we would think of as Leo energy. The more you kind of learn to embrace that, the more you will cultivate a very deep awareness of yourself. Because remember, Sun is in the 12th house. Sun is subconscious. So starting out in life, that's why so much of your personality was kind of subconscious or not conscious. It wasn't really there, so to speak. But once you do tap into that, you actually have this unique gift because you have this doorway or this window to your own deep subconscious. Or in other words, you have this potential for really powerful self-awareness, okay? And that's powerful because not only do you have self-awareness, but in having that, you're also very aware of other people, okay? And remember, Sun is in Cancer, Venus is in Cancer, Mercury is in Cancer. Cancer is a very emotional sign. With that emotion comes intuition. So not only do you have placements suggesting really powerful self-awareness and awareness of other people, other people's feelings, intentions, etc., but also, you have this really strong intuition that's kind of paired with that. Okay. So when you put it all together, I do think these are difficult placements, but they suggest, they suggest that you probably have psychic abilities. That goes hand in hand with that self-awareness and that awareness of other people, the intuition, etc. It's all kind of packaged together for you. Specifically, that those psychic abilities probably come from your father's side of the family. That's what often happens with Sun in the 12th house. Okay, so very difficult placement, but there's a lot of really powerful stuff that comes with that as well. More challenges that have to do with that. You are going to feel like a freak. You're gonna feel like a weirdo. I say this for multiple reasons. I can cite multiple placements in your chart, and this is common with chart reading. Once I get into a chart, I see multiple placements usually start to echo the same themes. That's kind of what it's all about. So for you, one of those main themes with Sun in the 12th house as well as Moon in the 6th house, I would say these are the most difficult houses in general, whether that be for transits or like this for a birth chart. But both of these houses indicate that you may be kind of a loner, and again, remember, I already said that you're kind of independent, you deal with things on your own. But these house placements as well, they suggest that you are likely very humble, very modest. You kind of just naturally accept that you may not be understood. You probably understand other people way better than they understand you. You're used to kind of just being on the sidelines, kind of just observing, and it's almost like you have a bird's eye view, like you're above it all, so to speak. Not saying that you're better than everyone else, but you're above it all. You're like detached. You're viewing things from a different perspective. You understand naturally that life is multifaceted. You are multifaceted. Everyone is multifaceted, but most people don't know that. Most people don't care to cultivate that deep kind of perspective or that deep awareness. But this is something that you have innately. And like I said, it will grow as you kind of develop as a person, throughout your 20s, 30s, etc. But on the other hand, it's kind of always there as well. You have this, you have a very unique perception, unique gifts, deep awareness, deep emotional awareness, and that sounds pretty cool, but that awareness can be painful at times. Like you see things that other people don't, and it means that you're going to be misunderstood. People aren't going to get you. You're going to feel kind of alone. And maybe to some extent you are fine alone, but we are human, we are social creatures. So what I'm getting at is I do think that's one of your main struggles is, if you're always on a different page from everyone and you're thinking about these deep things and you're having psychic abilities, you're open to things that are weird, things that other people aren't aware of. The challenge is, how do you function with people? How can you be honest with yourself and honest with other people and show up to the table, so to speak, show up to the party, metaphorically, of course. So anyway, we're going to talk more about your challenges later. I don't want to get too heavy right now, but let me kind of just bounce around and see what else I can kind of see here. Mercury in Cancer is also a placement that shows you have a lot of intuition. The way you think is actually based a lot more on intuition than it is logic. And I'm not saying you're not logical necessarily. In many ways, intuition is actually superior to logic because logic takes more energy and it takes more time. We have to think, okay, if A equals B, then B equals C or something. For you, you may be talented in that area. I'm not saying you're not, but I'm just saying that I think much of your process actually more just resembles you kind of just stepping into a situation and you just kind of know things. You don't exactly know how you know these things. Things just kind of come to you. Like, for example, this is just an example. It's kind of a metaphor, so don't take it literally. But like in school, when you're doing math or some other problem, you're supposed to show your work, right? At least that's how it was taught when I was in school. And for you, things like that may be kind of difficult because, again, you're not always doing the work, so to speak, to like think logically and analytically about something. A lot of times you just know things. You just, you know what you want, you know what you don't want. I do think, how do I put this? I guess I don't want to contradict myself because your placements do suggest, again, go back to that whole idea of, you're aware of how complex you are. You're aware of how complex life is and how complex people are. So to some extent, I guess that could indicate, you have a lot on your plate, so to speak. You're so painfully aware of everything. So I guess there could be some indecision from there. But whenever you tap into your intuition, which is very strong, again, I know I already said that, but I'll keep saying it. Whenever you tap into that intuition, that part is actually very black and white. And again, as you get more mature, throughout life and have more experiences under your belt, so to speak, your intuition is only going to become stronger. Okay. That's probably true for everyone, but especially true for you. Okay. So that intuition is very key. I think this is one of your greatest strengths. Because again, like I said, I'm more of a logical, analytical person. I'm intuitive as well, but I really admire, those that have charts like this that are so intuitive because again, you just kind of know things. You don't have to think about, whether it's a person or a situation. The more you tap into that, the more you'll just naturally know what you want, what you don't want, your boundaries as well. Having these placements suggests that you probably are very aware of your boundaries, which is very powerful as well. Okay, let me just kind of jump around here. Oh, one thing about Moon in 6th house, I did touch on this a little bit, but it just indicates what I find with people who have placements like that is they have very unique opinions. They think for themselves. And again, they're very humble, so they're not one to like shout out their answer or shout out their opinions. But I find that they, at least in my opinion, they have a very rich perspective because of their individual thinking, their independent thinking. So in other words, you probably have some very well thought out views, well thought out perspectives. For you, it doesn't really so much matter, if everyone else is doing something or if everyone else believes in something. For you, that's not good enough. You want to really understand, is this actually the right answer? Is this best for me? What makes sense to me, right? It's very personal. So that's more how you operate. All right. Let's see. Let me just kind of bounce around. One other main theme that I'm seeing in your chart is this combination of, you could say it's a combination of Cancer and Capricorn. That's a big part of it. You are combining two opposing sides. You were born right on a full moon. Like the full moon was exact almost to the minute that you were born. It was very, very close. So what that means is the sun and moon are opposing. So again, sun and moon represent pretty big parts of the personality, right? And because they're exactly opposite, you are combining totally opposing themes in yourself at the same time all the time. That's just who you are. That's what you deal with every second of your life. Specifically, these two opposing sides have to do with Cancer, which represents emotion, and Capricorn, which is much more practical, much more stoic. Capricorn more says, I don't care how I'm feeling in the moment. I care about tomorrow. I care about next week or next year or whatever. But Cancer is much more subjective. It's much more in the moment. What do I feel right now? And again, you have the task of balancing both of these. How do you manage both of these? How do you manage such strong emotion and intuition and such strong general feeling in the moment, as well as, this really strong need that you have to plan and to secure the future? and to be super practical, like, you know, in a way very detached, right? How do you do both of those at the same time? That's going to make you feel crazy, especially early in life. How do you do that? Sometimes you're not going to be able to balance these two parts of your personality. You may feel pulled in two different directions. There's a lot of drama that comes from just trying to balance that all. But again, there is the silver lining with everything in astrology, I think. And the silver lining here is, this will get easier over time. You've probably already made a lot of progress in this area. But once you learn to balance these two different opposing sides of yourself, boom, fireworks, right? Especially, again, there's so much intuition that comes from these two signs, right? And go back to what I kind of started out with. Both Cancer and Capricorn are involved with, finding stability, finding a structure, building a home, so to speak, right? So once you learn to kind of manage that contrast within yourself, again, I really think that you'll find this really strong intuition and really strong ability when it comes to managing, whether that's like managing a household, managing your workplace, managing your own life. You're going to be really excellent when it comes to, planning these things and building a structure, building a home. And I mean that metaphorically, building whatever it is, whatever you want. It's all about what you want. Okay. But part of that as well is Mars in Virgo. Mars is in Virgo, suggesting that you are a hard worker. You are always working. I feel like there's a lot of like dopamine that comes with people who have Mars in Virgo, because you're all about, being ambitious. And, I always quote Henry Ford, and forgive me if I don't quote it exactly, but he said, any large project is easy if you break it into small parts, something to that effect. That's how I describe people who have Mars in Virgo. You naturally understand that. Even daunting tasks, you just naturally break down into smaller, relatively easy pieces. And so, you'll do this thing and do that thing. And, you may find that like lists help you, for example, or even if you're not into lists, you're probably just into that general process. Like, okay, what's my goal? What's my big dream of what I want to accomplish in the future? And what are all the little things I need to do every day to get there, right? That's kind of what you are probably very skilled at, judging by your Mars and Virgo and Moon and Capricorn. Very productive. There's a lot of practicality and ambition and strong work ethic that come with those placements. And again, I hope I'm not repeating myself too much, but combining that whole theme with Sun in Cancer, Mercury in Cancer, Venus in Cancer, it's showing that not only are you a really strong, hard worker, you're very practical, but you also have this emotional kind of intuitive side as well. And again, that's very powerful when you combine that together. All right. Okay, let me just kind of bounce around here. You do have Leo rising, which honestly is like, it almost like doesn't fit with the rest of your chart. It's a very different energy. Leo rising shows that it would typically indicate that the way you approach things is head on, very direct. You want to just, when you're starting something, you want to just start it. Let's not beat around the bush. Let's get into it. This indicates that you have really powerful leadership potential as well because of that exact theme. Like, you just start things. So, you probably know how to handle attention to some extent. You know how to introduce yourself. You know how to approach things, right? And I know that may sound contradictory because I just said that, you're going to feel like a weirdo. You're going to be on your own a lot, right? You're not going to know how to work with other people, to some extent, especially when you're younger. But again, Leo rising kind of contrasts from that. So you may come across much more confident than you actually feel. Because when other people are first connecting with you, they're going to see the Leo rising. So they're going to look at you and go, oh, wow, this person is so sunshiny and so positive and optimistic. And maybe you are very optimistic, but at the same time, I think deep down you're dealing with very heavy energies all the time. Like, going back to that heavy awareness that you have, I think you may feel very serious a lot of the time. You're dealing with serious realities all the time. So again, it's just kind of interesting how I don't think other people would really see that at all with you. Maybe that's just part of other people not understanding you very well. I did say that earlier. But Leo rising is a strong position to have, right? You come across confident, you come across sure of yourself. I think that is true. You probably are very sure of yourself most of the time. But But yeah, so I mean, you can use that, especially with your midheaven in Aries as well, which we'll talk about that in the career part of the reading. But yeah, let me kind of just look over. I think I've talked about everything I want to talk about in this part of the reading. I'm gonna move on. So this next part is kind of heavy. I know that intro is a little bit heavy, but we're gonna talk about your past life, karma, if you want to call it that, and then that's really interesting though to when it's interesting to talk about because it relates to this life. Whatever you experienced in past lives, that also kind of represents what you're coming into this life with. So we're going to talk about your innate strengths, innate challenges, and then kind of what is the potential from there? Where are you going in this life? What are you learning in this life? Somewhere in there, we're also going to talk about your upbringing and your childhood to some extent, okay? Okay, so let's start out with past lives, okay? So in these readings, I don't do a super strong deep dive into past lives. I mostly just talk about the South Node. So South Node is actually not depicted on this chart, but I know where it is because North Node is on the chart. North Node is at 2 degrees Scorpio in the 3rd house. South Node is always exactly opposite. So this means that you have South Node at 2 degrees Taurus in the 9th house. This indicates that in a past life, you basically fulfilled the role of Taurus, kind of. So you were someone who was very independent, very reliable. That probably sounds familiar because your chart echoes that theme in this life as well, and that's not unusual. But yeah, you were someone who was very reliable. You had to be extremely consistent. You were someone who was extremely routine oriented because you had to be, because other people were relying on you, okay? So exactly what that looks like is hard for me to say. It makes me think, doctor is like the main thing that comes to mind because, people were counting on you. You didn't have the luxury of being spontaneous or just doing whatever you felt in the moment because other people were really counting on you. Their livelihood or whatever it was on the line. And, you had to be there at this exact time to do this exact process in order to help them or whatever it was. It's also interesting, South Node in the 9th house, that indicates that you were someone who was dealing with higher learning. You were someone who was dealing with spirituality, philosophy, maybe religion. You were someone who was well-versed when it came to metaphysics and what else? Philosophy. You were someone who knew how the world worked, so to speak, right? So combining both of those is very interesting. It's kind of an interesting combination. You're someone extremely independent. It almost makes me think of someone who is like in the clergy, or maybe you were a shaman or something. A lot of traditional societies had some kind of witch doctor or shaman who was kind of a leader of the community, right? So I could definitely see you fulfilling that type of role. That would also, especially like witch doctor, because that would kind of merge the two. You were someone who was not just dealing with like wisdom and spirituality, but I guess people would depend on you for that, and that is very important too. But even a more pressing need would be, you may have been someone who is performing some kind of medical service as well. Okay, so those are just speculations, but the main thing I can see is those themes of being accountable and being aware of the spiritual focus as well. I just want to note really quick before I continue that it's interesting how there are so many other placements in your chart, which I've already talked about, that echo those same themes. So I think you actually, more than most people, are dealing with a lot of the same themes in this life, which is kind of interesting. At this point, though, what I like to talk about is, on the one hand, it would be a waste not to utilize those strengths that you've built up from those past lifetimes, right? Because, you've spent so much time doing those, maybe multiple lives filling similar roles, right? In this case, with being very reliable and delving into metaphysics and philosophy and all that. So you're well versed in these areas. This, it's familiar to you. You're naturally drawn to these types of roles because it's what's familiar to you. So use that, right? You have those strengths. So part of your purpose, so to speak, in this life is to use that, right? However, on the other hand, it would be a waste if that was all you did in this life, right? Because if you just simply repeated the exact same themes, processes, and roles in this life that you did in other lives, what would be the point of this life, right? So that's where the North Node comes in. North Node is in 3rd house Scorpio, and the main thing that I think it's basically saying is learning how to involve yourself with other people, right? Not that you weren't necessarily involved with people before, but what I mean by that is like, I talked about how in a past life you were the caretaker, you were the one, everyone was relying on you, and you had to be very independent because no one was there to for you to rely on. You were the one that had to have the answers. You were the one that was maybe in charge or whatever it was. You were responsible for everything, right? So coming into this life, much of what you're meant to learn is when to rely on other people. Let people in. It's okay to be human. You have issues, you have problems, everybody has problems, right? You can definitely handle your own. I'm not saying not to. Use that independent streak, right? That's very powerful. That's something to be proud of. But at the same time, at some point, I don't want to say you need to do anything, but at some point you may be interested in, or it may behoove you to open up with other people, let them in, rely on them, whatever. And a lot of this is very personal. I'm definitely talking intimate relationships, romantic relationships, but as well as like family or whoever you choose to live with. It's about allowing yourself to be emotionally vulnerable as well. That may be very difficult for you. I know it's difficult probably for everyone, right? But especially for you, just allowing those kind of human tendencies, human traits to come to the surface. I think part of this as well is about embracing your own emotion. You have such strong emotion and intuition. I know I talked about that a lot, but again, it's like you're always detaching from it. It's like part of you feels like you can't embrace that part of yourself. Excuse me. Part of this could have to do with many of us were, especially those of us that are spiritual, those of us that are into astrology and things like that, many of us were persecuted for these things in past lives, right? So that could be part of your journey, your experience, your past. Part of you just feels like you're not allowed to be emotional, sensitive, psychic, intuitive. You have to like keep that under wraps. You can't express it to anyone. So part of your journey in this life is just learning to open up with those deep feelings, the emotions, the intuition, even the psychic abilities. And again, use your discernment. Of course, it's not always appropriate to like go full out in really strong emotion, but there is a time and a place for it, right? So that's basically what I think a major challenge is for you, but also a major area of potential for you as well. It's going to feel uncomfortable at first embracing this part of your personality and, being vulnerable, being emotional, kind of forging those strong, close partnerships, relationships. It's going to feel very uncomfortable at first, but the more you kind of delve into this way of being or this part of your life, the more that it's going to really open up for you. And you have this really strong potential there. Okay. That's the main thing I see from that. Another position in astrology that indicates a lot of karma and challenges would be Saturn. So Saturn is in 8th house Pisces. It looks like you are currently experiencing your Saturn return. So I don't typically talk about transits in these readings, but if I do see a major transit and I happen to notice it, I'm not opposed to talking about it. Saturn return, just in case you're not familiar, it happens every 28 to 30 years. It takes about 2.5 years or so to go through. It's basically when transiting Saturn goes around the whole zodiac and it comes back to the position it was at when you were born. Okay, so you were born with Saturn and Pisces. As I'm doing this reading right now in late November 2023, we currently have Saturn in Pisces right now, and it will continue to transit through Pisces well into all the way through 2024 and then well into 2025. Okay, so for the next 2 years or so, you are probably maturing a lot right now, and you will continue to do so. Oftentimes the Saturn return, this 2.5 to 3 year period is characterized by hardship and increased responsibility, but it's kind of like a rite of passage. So it's something everyone goes through in their late 20s. And basically, there's some kind of experience that involves more responsibility, and ideally you kind of take that on, become more mature. Oftentimes we gain more of an understanding and appreciation for the future, right? And on the one hand, you typically think about the future. Your chart suggests that you're very responsible, but it could be a whole bunch of things. Some people learn, I need to stop partying, I want to start a family, or I want to focus on my career more, whatever's important to you. For you, it could be the other way around. Maybe you worked a lot in your 20s and you're getting to the point where you're saying, okay, how do I, what am I truly here for? How do I focus on myself more? Maybe it's about learning to have fun. Specifically, Saturn in the eighth house echoes themes that I've kind of already talked about. That would also indicate learning to rely on other people and build those intimate relationships. So that's just strengthening that theme, that probability for you. But Saturn in Pisces would indicate, for one, it indicates most people with Saturn in Pisces have sleep issues, whether that just be like insomnia or things with dreams, like other sleep issues. But on a deeper level, what it has to do with is you may feel like it's very difficult just to relax, just to be. And this also indicates another theme that's kind of echoing, which is part of this is just embracing your own emotion and intuition and spirituality. So it's good that you're here, you're interested in astrology, you're asking me for this reading. I think that indicates that you've probably grown a lot already, right? But you will likely continue to grow in these areas. You have such strong potential for those deep emotions, deep awareness, deep intuition, psychic abilities. It's just that these positions are also indicating that, much of your life, maybe you were taught to hate these parts of yourself or run away from these parts of yourself. But over time, you're learning to embrace these parts of yourself and to kind of like allow them to emerge, allow them to be. I think something I heard somewhere is that, when it comes to like these types of things of like growth and consciousness and awareness, a lot of the time it's not necessarily about learning something new. It's more about just like peeling away these layers in order to allow what's already in you to kind of just naturally emerge. So these outer layers of trauma and, habits that we learn to survive in this world, basically, because it's not easy. We can't always just be super open and transparent and, allow our emotions to be, and, we have to do things to protect ourselves, right? But part of what you're here to learn is to, unpeel, peel back those traumas or those layers to, you have such strong emotion, passion, intuition inside. It's about learning to allow it within yourself to exist, basically. And once you do that, it'll just emerge on its own. Okay. But yeah, that's pretty much what I see there. Sorry for this. But let's talk about so we talked about your challenges. Let's talk about your upbringing a little bit. So, yeah. Okay. I'm just making sure I covered everything I wanted to cover, but let's talk about your upbringing. So we already talked about how Moon in Capricorn, typically that means kind of a rough childhood. That could have happened in multiple different ways. Maybe you had parents, maybe you were kind of just on your own a lot, so you learned to take care of yourself that way. You may have had very strict parents or other, guardian figures, whoever. They may have been very strict, very hard on you in some kind of way, or maybe some kind of combination. But either way, again, you learn to kind of handle your own very early on. Two positions I look to that give us kind of an idea of what you were like as a child and what your experience was like as a child are the South Node and the IC. Remember, South Node is that same point that I referred to for past lives. South Node in Taurus indicates that as a child, you were, again, you were very reliable, very responsible. You may have not really been like a kid. I don't think you had that luxury of, I'm just a kid, I'm just having fun and being silly and, just kind of learning. You didn't have that luxury. You had to be kind of like an adult. You were mature very, very early. You had to be responsible and practical and logical at a young age. I see in Libra suggests that you were probably kind of a wallflower. You were very observant. I think I already talked about that in another part of the reading. But typically with IC and Libra, you may have been kind of shy or a little bit kind of closed off, introverted. But this same position it goes hand in hand with midheaven and Aries, and this generally suggests that you will become more outgoing as you mature. You probably already have to some extent. But yeah, usually very shy as a child, but very intelligent as well. You were always observing, watching, learning, especially with people. You may have been very interested in people at a young age, just kind of watching everything, figuring everything out. You may have been very involved with like kind of sedentary activities, so things involving like crafts or like reading, maybe making something with your hands. These kind of like peaceful, kind of solitary activities you may have been very involved in as a child. Okay, and let me just kind of bounce around here. Sun and moon are in opposing signs. We talked about that. Well, when it comes to your childhood, this would indicate that your parents or whoever was raising you were very different from each other. They may have had completely different ideas of how to raise their children, or how to raise you. Um, or even if you were raised by one person, that person may have had a lot of contrast within themselves. They acted different ways at different times. So you didn't always know what was expected from you. You didn't know, kind of what the program was. It was always changing. You had an upbringing that was very multifaceted. That is generally the harder route to go. But the benefit there is that it kind of trains you to hold two contradictory ideas in your mind at the same time. And this is valuable, I think, in two main areas. One is with empathy. So, you are naturally skilled with empathy. You know how to listen to someone, and you can kind of entertain someone else's point of view, even if their point of view may be totally contradictory from your own point of view. You can kind of listen to them, you can hear them out, right? So potential for strong empathy. Also, this whole dynamic would indicate really strong potential for understanding complex concepts as well, because again, you can hold two different ideas in your head at the same time. So again, that's the more challenging way to go, but there are some pretty cool strengths that tend to emerge from that as well. Talking a little bit more about your parents. Sun in the 12th house. Remember, I said that psychic abilities probably come from your father's side of the family. That also indicates, though, that your father may have been absent. You also have Saturn retrograde, which also indicates the potential for an absent father. So that could have happened in a whole bunch of different ways. With any of what I'm saying, I can't see literally how it happened. I can kind of see the lines, but I can't see the colors, if that makes sense. Like, that's one analogy for it. So I don't know why or how your father was absent, but you do have those two pretty strong indicators. Going along with this whole idea of psychic abilities on your father's side of the family, oftentimes there are mental health issues that come along with that, right? Because, that, I don't know, that it just does, right? Being so creative, being so intuitive, that can be very painful, especially for a male, right? That, these traits are not really, I think they're difficult for anyone to deal with, but they're definitely not accepted in males in Western society, especially traditionally. So that could have been the difficulty. That could have been related to his absence. He may have been like mentally absent. He could have been dealing with, mental issues, psychological disorders, maybe of some kind. Let's see. And then honestly, well, you have moon in the 6th house, which I don't want to say that would indicate an absent mother necessarily. It just indicates that your mother wouldn't really understand you. Like, there'd be kind of a disconnect there. You may have been different from what she was expecting from you. Or, I don't know, she may just not ever fully understand you, if that makes sense. So that just kind of is what it is, I guess. I want to apologize because this seems so heavy, but honestly, you have kind of a heavy chart. You have a lot to deal with. I think it reminds me of that saying, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. I don't know if that's always necessarily true, but that's what your chart makes me think of. I'm sorry. But that's the silver lining, though, that, it's you do have a lot of pressure on you, but it's pushing you to be, like I said, very independent, very intuitive. There's a lot of good that can come from that. That probably has already come from that, but it's up to you. That's what, alchemy is all about. You're dealing with such hard energies, but then it's up to you to turn those energies into something better, right? So I think that's something that's very powerful that you are working with. We're all working with that to some extent, but especially you, I think. Okay, I think I pretty much talked about your childhood as much as I can. Um, yeah, and we talked about past lives, upbringing. I think I covered everything there. Let's talk about your career, your reputation a little bit. So I can't narrow down and tell you exactly what job you should have for the rest of your life. Most people are multifaceted, right? So most of us have different avenues that we could take career wise and still find some kind of satisfaction, right? But I can at least see kind of what your role is, so to speak, in public, in society, in your career, and I can see kind of generally what career you may be suited for, right? So let's see. So for one, I like to just kind of go over different strengths and attributes that we've covered thus far. You're very intuitive. That could be especially really that could especially be very powerful with people, or maybe some kind of like what's the word, like psychological. I could see you being really skilled with psychology, maybe helping someone in that type of way. Very independent. Well, definitely a lot of factors for being a strong leader as well. Some kind of manager, maybe running your own business. I say that for multiple reasons. Almost your whole chart kind of suggests that. Moon in Capricorn, Sun in Cancer. These are two placements that suggest that you have the potential for being a really great, kind of fulfilling like a motherly or fatherly role. Like you are someone who has this kind of wisdom about you, and these are both cardinal signs, so they both suggest that you are a leader. You are initiating something new. You're pushing forward, your intentions, your agenda, so to speak. So again, that can make you a really great leader. Leo rising, we talked about that, how that suggests that you're have really great potential for being a leader as well. You've got that really strong work ethic from Mars and Virgo. We talked about that too. But then also, the main thing would be midheaven. So midheaven represents your career and reputation, right? Midheaven is an Aries, so that's really suggesting that whatever it is you're going to do, you need some independence. Like oftentimes for people that have midheaven and Aries, it doesn't work for them to just work at, McDonald's or something, or just to get any job. Because for them, as soon as some manager or something starts barking orders at you, or starts barking at orders at someone with midheaven and Aries, I've heard stories of people just walk out because they kind of go, "Who are you to tell me what to do?" in that kind of way, right? For you, you're gonna want to either do your own thing and have that autonomy to use your own judgment, be your own person, just exercise that autonomy basically. Or if you do work for someone else, it better be someone you respect. That's especially important for you, more so than most people, right? Um, you know, if you're working for someone else, it better be someone that you respect, and you still need some autonomy to breathe and to do your own thing. You probably hate being micromanaged. Everyone hates being micromanaged, but especially you, more than most people. I think that's kind of the bottom line. That's really important for you. So I could see you earlier in life being kind of shy, or maybe not knowing how to work with other people or associate with other people. But I think the more that well, I guess you don't necessarily have to develop that. You could just be a business owner and kind of just do your own thing. But typically, we need to become more comfortable socially, I guess, to do that. So that could be part of your journey. Maybe once you kind of integrate more with people, and we talked about those areas of growth for you. Learning to be yourself with other people, represent yourself, and kind of be more proud and outgoing. I think that will be kind of natural for you. I'm not saying that you're like forced to do that if you don't want to at all. I just think that that's kind of a natural trajectory for you. And I think that once all of that kind of opens up for you, it'll be very natural for you to step into a leadership type of role. But like I said, it could be different though. Maybe you are running, there's all kinds of businesses, especially these days. So maybe you are running a business. You could do something online or something where you are just much more solo and much more independent. I could see it kind of panning out either way. It depends on what you want to do. You have free will. You can do whatever you want. But that's what I see. You being very independent. That's the main thing I see. Let me just kind of look around. Anything else I can see? It is interesting, though, that the ruler of your midheaven would be Mars, and Mars is in Virgo. So that actually suggests working for someone, serving someone. So So yes, you are very independent, but at the same time, I think you want to help people. You want to work toward a greater structure of some kind, if that makes sense. I know that's kind of vague. So exactly how you do that, I'm not sure. Again, it could be something psychological as well. Help, using that deep understanding, that deep intuition to help others. But you can apply that in a number of ways. Whatever that strong intuition you have, I think your chart suggests that you are almost like a prophet. You can see into the far future, and you can use that however you want. You can use that to run your own business and to do so in a very intelligent, kind of sophisticated way, right? Um, but um, but yeah, so I know that's kind of vague, but that's pretty much what I see for your career and reputation. Oh, last thing about that too. I know I already kind of touched on this, but Leo rising with midheaven and Aries, in public and in society, as well as maybe even online as well, you come across very confident. You come across very forthright. It's interesting because you really don't have a lot of fire placements in your chart. The only planet in a fire sign would be Jupiter in Sagittarius. But even Jupiter in Sagittarius suggests that you have this ability to connect with this optimism, this expansive type of energy. And that's what people see when they first meet you. When people first meet us, they see what's represented by our ascendant and our midheaven first. And for you, again, with Leo rising and midheaven in Aries, they see you as being very fiery, very confident, very optimistic. So and it's not just a facade. That's truly representing what you're here to do. This is how you go about your life. This is kind of your purpose, and it's how you approach things. You approach things head on. You've got this unbeatable confidence. And combining this with Moon and Capricorn, Sun and Cancer, it looks like you are very determined. That's the word. Like if you have a goal, I wouldn't want to step in your way type of thing. You know what I mean? Like you have a vision, and because you have such strong intuition, when you have a vision, you know that it's possible. You know exactly, like you're sure of it. You're just so sure of it, even though it is the future. Not, you're as sure of it as you can be of anything in the future, if that makes sense. Whatever that goal is, whatever that intention is. So again, I think that is extremely valuable. Whatever it is you want to do, whether that's running a company with a lot of other people or doing something more solo, yeah, you're very determined, very ambitious, and other people see that in you as well, which is important as well. That's very valuable. So yeah, use that. You have many attributes which suggest you being an extremely effective leader. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it at that. Let's talk about your relationships, romance. Who are you attracted to? What does the ideal relationship look like for you? We're gonna talk about all that. I just noticed my camera is slightly crooked. It's kind of too late for that, right? Yeah, and we'll talk about astrologically, like what signs are you compatible with, all that good stuff. So for all of that, I mostly look to Mars, Venus, and the descendant, okay? As well as the ascendant. Ascendant and descendant are kind of, they're opposing. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. But first, let's talk about Mars and Venus. So Mars and Venus are also kind of like two sides of the same coin. They're both representing desire, pleasure. They represent what you want. They represent what you find attractive, as well as how you are attractive. They go both ways, right? Mars in particular, in the realm of relationships, and more has to do with sexuality and like sexual attraction. Venus has more to do with romantic attraction, how you express yourself romantically. So I do think Venus is a little bit more important, but let's talk about Mars first. So Mars in Virgo suggests that you are attracted to someone who is modest, humble, intelligent, hardworking, practical. These are basically Virgo keywords, right? So it could literally be someone with Virgo placements. You may be attracted to, but remember, it's more just suggesting that you're attracted to that kind of person. Whether or not they also have the other criteria that are necessary for a deep, long-term romantic relationship, that may or may not be the case. I'm mostly just talking about attraction here. But for attraction, you want someone independent as well. Mars is in the second house, so someone down to earth, practical, reliable, consistent. We all want that, right? But actually, no. Many people are looking for someone really wild and adventurous. You want someone who's chill, intelligent. Someone who says what they mean and means what they say. Someone very direct. Virgo represents kind of like, Virgo typically desires authenticity. So that's kind of what you're wanting That's what you're attracted to anyway. Let's see what else. Mars and Virgo. Mars is very. Mars, let me back up. Mars and Virgo shows that when it comes to sexuality, you may be actually a little bit traditional in that area, a little bit vanilla. Or, with sexual attraction in general, you're probably very private about this type of thing. You're not, wanting to have any kind of like grandiose displays or like, like public displays of affection, things like that. You're more valuing someone who's a little bit kind of understated or kind of humble. These more subtle displays of affection are more what's going to be attractive to you. And the last thing I want to say about that is, Mars and Virgo, I've heard a word of sapiosexual, like attracted to intelligence. That's what you are. You can't just be attracted to someone just because of their physicality. You really need someone who's intelligent as well. You want someone who has, deep opinions, someone who knows a lot about many different subjects. What else? You want someone deep, basically, right? Which makes sense because it looks like you're a very deep person. So that is intertwined with your attraction, okay? But let's talk about Venus as well. So Venus is in Cancer. So again, Venus represents kind of what you're attracted to as well as how you are in relationships. How do you express yourself romantically as well? So with Venus in Cancer, you're going to be attracted to people that are like Cancer. So maybe someone with Cancer placements or other water placements. That would be Pisces or Scorpio. Cancer in particular, though, you have not just Venus, but Sun and Mercury there as well. So most people with strong Cancer placements, you're going to relate to a lot because you have those placements as well. Not just that, but you're going to be attracted to them because of your Venus there. And this could be not just someone who literally has Cancer placements. It could just be someone who resonates with those themes. So someone sensitive, someone deeply emotional, someone passionate, someone who kind of wears their heart on their sleeves. That could be very attractive and even relatable for you as well. I think this would actually be really excellent for you as well because someone who is very kind of openly emotional and secure with themselves in that kind of way. Not all water signs are that evolved, of course, but someone who is that way, they're gonna help. They're gonna help you to open up in a very strong way. Because again, you're looking for someone reliable, someone consistent, but also someone very sensitive and emotional. So someone who is that way and who is comfortable with themselves, it's going to help you to be that way as well. And again, that's something that you may have kind of a hard time with. So Cancer is definitely one of my top choices for you. Because you have Mercury there, that means that, you're going to communicate very effectively with people who have strong Cancer placements as well. And when I say strong Cancer placements, I just mean, Sun, Moon, Rising, maybe Venus or Mars as well, really any of the inner planets. That could definitely be something attractive for you. Not just attractive, but something, someone who you understand on a deep level, you communicate with them well, you're attracted to them. So there's a lot of, different things there that could add up to something special. What else? Pisces or Scorpio could kind of fit that as well. They're also emotional, intuitive, creative, sensitive, right? So they could help with this too. They could be attractive and relatable for you. Pisces, you do have Saturn there. So someone with strong Pisces placements, you'll constantly be learning lessons from them, which, that can be great for evolution, but at the same time, it can kind of put stress on a romantic relationship. So that may or may not work depending on their other placements, right? As well as if you're just open to that kind of thing. So there's that. Scorpio is a little bit more closed off than the other water signs. It needs to be in control all the time. And, Scorpio can be a little bit secretive and private as well. You may relate to them to some extent. I think Scorpio kind of just depends on their other placements. Because, I don't know. Scorpio definitely, most people with strong Scorpio placements aren't really going to help you to open up because they're not very open, if that makes sense. And there's nothing wrong with that. And again, it just depends on what's in their chart as well. Depending on their placements, they may be very open and kind of wear their heart on their sleeves. But that is generally more rare for Scorpio. Also, it's interesting you have North Node and Pluto in Scorpio. So these are also placements which suggest constant evolution. And, so someone with those placements could it dealing with them would result in you growing a lot and constantly learning. But again, that can make the relationship more challenging for you as well. So really, Cancer is the water sign I'm mostly looking at for you. So yeah, we'll definitely put that at near the top of the list for sure. Either someone with Cancer placements or someone who's just sensitive, emotional, someone who's very in touch with their feelings. I think would be very excellent for you. That would probably be good for anyone, but especially for you. Okay. Let's see what else. Oh, last thing about that too. So having Venus in Cancer, people with Venus in Cancer, when you have feelings for someone, you feel very strongly. This is an extremely loyal placement. You have multiple placements, which suggest that you may be very monogamous. When you're attracted to someone, you want that stability. You want to cultivate something really deep with that person. So what else? And with Venus in Cancer, it suggests that you're probably very nurturing as well. So the more you're engaging in a kind of romantic situation and having feelings for someone and all that, the more it's going to bring out that very nurturing side of you. You want to take care of them, you want to support them, you want to shower them with affection. So unfortunately, I have seen certain people with Venus in Cancer kind of, be involved in less than ideal situations with people who take advantage of them. However, you do have placements which suggest you've got that really strong intuition and strong boundaries. So that will help to avoid, those codependent or other types of situations, right? But I just wanted to throw that out there. So I guess going off of that, ideally it would be best to find someone else who's also very nurturing as well. So you may find that with certain people who have Cancer placements. It really depends though, depending on the placements that are in Cancer. When you have Cancer placements, the feelings are so strong. So some people will actually become selfish because they feel what they're feeling so strongly that they don't have any room to be open to other people's feelings. But other people, or maybe more evolved Cancers, are very nurturing, right? So someone with Cancer placements could be very nurturing, very receptive. You are kind of that way too. They could help you to open up. So that does look really cool, really potentially auspicious. Let's put it that way. Okay, let's talk about the descendant though. So the descendant is actually, I would say, the most important point or placement for long-term compatibility, especially. And it works hand in hand with the ascendant. So having ascendant in Leo, to me, that suggests that you may be the one who initiates the relationship. You're kind of the leader in that area. And you may be the one who's kind of like forthright. Like you're the one not just initiating when it comes to like interacting with this person or with people, but also with like initiating the plans, initiating the plans, I guess, the agenda, the long-term focus. Okay. And also having ascendant in Leo means that you're very strong-willed. You're not going to change for anyone. You're very independent. We already talked about that. But having descendant in Aquarius suggests that the kind of person that you'd be attracted to in a long-term sense, the kind of person that you'd be most naturally suited for in a partnership, would be someone who is also very strong-willed, but more in a kind of detached way. Someone who's kind of like Aquarius, basically. So they are a leader, but more in the sense of leading by example. They're a person who kind of does their own thing. They are probably someone who's very intelligent as well. I keep getting a block here. Descendant in Aquarius. Aquarius has to do with uniqueness, right, and eccentricity. So having descendant in Aquarius means that you want someone who's very intelligent, who thinks for themselves, someone who does their own thing. They're a leader again, but they're a leader in kind of just leading their own path, so to speak. They may have kind of a provocative appearance. They may be very unusual. They may be very quirky. They don't really fit in with society, so to speak, or with other people. I think that could be attractive because to some extent you are that way too, a little bit. But they may be, well, descendant in Aquarius would typically indicate that they would be more detached than you are. So, but I know that's a bit contradictory. So combining Venus in Cancer as well as your other Cancer placements with descendant in Aquarius, to me, it's painting this picture of someone who is simultaneously sensitive but also detached. Which kind of makes sense actually, because that's kind of how you are. You're very deep feeling, very sensitive, but also very detached at the same time. So in a way, that's kind of what you're looking for as well. I think that's what would best work for you. Someone who also has that balance of being very goal oriented, being very focused on the future, and they think very holistically. They can think very detached. They may be very interested in ideas or people, etc. But at the same time, they're also very sensitive as well, very emotional, very creative too. So someone with Aquarius placements could definitely fit this. To some extent, this is kind of an opposites attract situation because you actually have no planets in air signs at all. So what this means is like you can be bogged down. I think I mentioned earlier, you can feel very serious at times. You have like the weight of the world on your shoulders all the time. So everything can just feel very heavy for you. Part of this is because of this lack of air energy is detached. It is very light, right? Just like it sounds like. It's very spontaneous, and that detachedness is what allows air energy to be so great with like information and ideas and stuff like that. So this is something that you may not naturally really connect with, but you're attracted to it in other people, because you have this kind of missing, so to speak. We kind of draw out the elements that we lack, right? So someone with strong air placements, that would be Gemini, Libra, or especially Aquarius, they're going to be kind of exotic for you. They're going to be very different, very unusual. I mean, part of that is just because they tend to be kind of different and unusual, provocative, unique, eccentric, etc. But they're especially going to be different and unusual because they represent something very different than how you are. So for most people, that would be difficult to maintain, but because you have descendant in Aquarius, it looks like that's actually what you're seeking. So let's see. So I do think Aquarius would be generally the most attractive air sign for you. Not just because descendant is there, but also because Aquarius is, fixed air. Unlike Gemini and Libra, Aquarius is a little bit more consistent. They're a little bit more set in their ways. They are more strong-willed, so to speak. I think that would be attractive for you because, again, you're looking for security. You're looking for stability. Gemini and Libra are a little bit more indecisive, more fickle, more multifaceted. They're detached in the sense that they'll try this, they'll try that. They're kind of all over the place. I think that could kind of freak you out. I don't think that's what you're looking for. You want someone a little bit more predictable, someone more reliable. And not that Gemini or Libra, not that people with those placements can't be reliable. It's just that, I don't know, they're more malleable, so to speak. They're very adaptable. Again, I just don't think that's what you're really looking for. So maybe with someone with air placements in general, but especially Aquarius, and then Cancer. Cancer and Aquarius are the main signs I think of for your compatibility. So perhaps someone with placements in those signs. I have noticed that I have done many readings of couples that have like the same ascendant sign, so maybe someone else who has Leo rising. That could be interesting just because you'll kind of be on the same page in terms of like how you approach life, how you approach situations. You'll both be kind of, very independent. You'll both be leaders of some kind. Both be very strong-willed. So that could be attractive as well. Let's talk about the other fire signs. So the fire element is another element that you really don't have a lot of planets in at all. So yes, you may kind of draw that energy out, but it's going to be something more difficult to maintain, I think. Someone else who's Leo rising, you'll relate a lot, but any other kind of fire placements, I just think that not only is it very different from you, but it's also just not something you're really looking for. People with strong fire placements are going to be super spontaneous, adventurous, very confident, very bold. Again, I think your chart suggests to me that you're looking for that stability, that closeness. You want that security with someone. Fire signs aren't necessarily the best at that because they are so bold. They're also very active. They're constantly trying new things and asserting their independence and their sovereignty. They don't always want that like closeness with a relationship. So that kind of clashes with some of your placements, I think. Okay, we talked about fire, we talked about air, we talked about water, and I talked about Mars and Virgo, but I didn't really talk about the Earth signs in general. Earth signs you're going to relate to a lot because you have moon in Capricorn. So the deep part of your personality is Capricorn. So you are earthy. Earth signs are practical, hardworking, typically. They are, what else? They're down to earth, right? So they have a heavy energy. They've got that practicality, that groundedness. They've got that reliability usually. So you are that way. In a way, it's almost like you don't necessarily need more of that. I mean, I don't hate earth energy for you. Someone who has strong earth energy, they may connect with you on a deep level because of your moon placement. So that could be a strong friendship or partnership. I think it would just depend on the rest of their placements as usual. But someone who just, like hypothetically, who just had a lot of earth placements, so Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo, I think you would relate a lot to them and you may even be attracted to them to some extent. But I would see it still as being more of a friendship, really, because it's like putting two negative magnets together, kind of. But I think if we just involved some other kind of placements like Cancer or Aquarius, then it could be more interesting because you've got Moon in Capricorn, which suggests deeper relatability with another Earth sign. You've got Mars in Virgo, which suggests that attraction. It's like you just need something else going on in their chart for that deeper connection, I think. So Earth signs, it could kind of go either way. I could see them being good friends with you. I could see a relationship, but that would depend on what's going on in their chart. Someone who just has Earth signs alone, I don't really see kind of clicking for you. Maybe. I mean, you would like how reliable they are, how grounded they are. That would be nice for you. But again, you're also wanting someone detached and creative and intuitive, emotional. At least that's how I'm reading your chart. So you're not going to find that with someone who just has Earth signs. They may be a little bit too focused on physicality for you, just focused on work, money, things like that. So you might need someone with a little water or air, especially Cancer or Aquarius. Okay, that's pretty much what I have for your reading. There is, at this last part of the reading, I like to just kind of take the opportunity to go back over anything that I may have missed or didn't get a chance to talk about. There was one thing that I wanted to mention. So I noticed that your Lilith is conjunct Mercury, which is very interesting. Lilith, to put it in a nutshell, Lilith represents kind of a dark energy. It's definitely not evil or bad by any means, not at all. But Lilith represents this kind of like untamable feminine energy. It's like this wild feminine energy. It really comes out sexually, but also potentially in like crisis situations. And again, it is kind of dark in nature because it is untamable. It's a part of all of us that is a little bit rebellious, I think. For you, having that conjunct Mercury means that it's a little bit more important for you than it is for most people. So how do I put this? Like what you're mentally drawn to, so what you're curious about, what you learn about, you may be drawn toward like taboo subjects or kind of dark subjects, things that kind of go against the grain. I think I already kind of touched on that from these other placements in your chart, but that's just one that I thought I would mention. So I'm just going to put that out there for you. Okay, but that's pretty much what I have for you. Definitely let me know if you have any questions or feedback at all. If there's something that you'd like me to rephrase or to clarify, I'd be more than happy to do that. If there's something you're wondering about that I just didn't talk about in the reading, definitely ask me. I would definitely be happy to answer any questions, whether that be just in an email. We could continue our email dialogue, or if you had a more intensive question, I could even do a follow-up video. I've done that for people before as well. But yeah, definitely let me know. But I hope this reading was helpful or maybe just confirmed a few things for you. And again, anyone else who wants a reading, definitely hit me up. But yeah, thanks for this opportunity to read your chart. Have a great day. I'll talk to you later.